Multiple areas of development are possible as hurricane season is just about to start. What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have quite a bit to go over with you today. We have two areas of interest in the East Pacific that we're going to be talking about. Right now, we're also watching a few things in the Atlantic that we're going to be going over as well. So it's going to be a pretty action-packed video for you today as hurricane season starts tomorrow. Tomorrow's the official start of hurricane season in the Atlantic. It technically has already started in the East Pacific, but we can count hurricane season as starting, at least on the Pat's Path Predictor channel, starting right about now as we have our areas of interest, and we're going to go ahead and dive right into this right here. So starting off, we have our two areas of interest that we're taking a look at and paying very close attention to, especially this one over here off the coast of Central America. So we're going to be covering both of these. We're going to be reading both of these AOIs out, and we're going to kind of talk about models and kind of look at what's going on in the long run. So here's the start. With this system has a 90% chance of formation in the next 7 days as of 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and this is what we have going on well southwest of the Baja California Peninsula. A broad area of low pressure located well southwest of the southern tip of Baja California is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions appear conducive for gradual development, and a tropical depression is likely to form during the middle part of the week while moving westward or west-northwestward at 10 to 15 miles per hour across the western portion of the East Pacific. 90% chance of formation in the next 7 days. Now a 10% chance of formation in the next 48 hours. So this is definitely something that's going to start ramping up in the next couple of days, and we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that moving forward. But we're also going to want to watch out for this one, as this system arguably has a higher ceiling and is actually more of a threat to land than the one further to the west. So let's go ahead and read this warning out. An area of low pressure may develop late this week or early next week south of the southern coasts of Mexico and Guatemala. Environmental conditions appear favorable for some development of the system thereafter, while it moves westward to west-northwestward at around 10 miles per hour. 20% chance of formation in the next 7 days. This was just tagged this morning. In yesterday's video, I was talking about how they might be tagging this and how this might be designated an AOI in the next couple of days. Well, it looks like I was right on the money with that. So that's definitely something that we're going to want to pay attention to for sure. And now let's go ahead and shift over to our ensembles, and then we'll shift over to the operational runs and go from there. So here is our ensemble models for you guys right here. This is the European, this is 72 hours out, and this is for our little area of interest further to the western part of the EPAC right here. We're going to go ahead and zoom in and kind of give a day-by-day analysis as to what we might be looking at. It looks like, according to these ensembles, we have two potential areas where the system could end up developing. We have one further to the west that's relatively weaker, and one further to the east that shows a relatively strong type of signal that has more power with it too. I'm curious. I just want to check to see if the GFS also has this as well. Yes, they actually do. So this has definitely been cross-checked for sure. So it looks like there's two possible areas that the system could develop, and we're going to want to watch out for and pay attention to. But 72 hours out, already seeing a lot of pop and a lot of power with these ensembles right here. I'm looking at this, though. I am a bit skeptical about this. Honestly, yes, the waters are extremely warm over there. They're about 31 degrees Celsius, but I'm not 100% sure how the dry air aspect of it is going to go and how the wind shear will pan out. But regardless, it does look like a pretty interesting start to the season regardless, though, especially if this system gets its act together and quickly organizes. However, as we continue to move forward, it does appear that at least from compared to what we saw initially, the system does start to weaken relatively quickly as well. So it does look like it's going to be one of those situations where it doesn't have necessarily the highest ceiling, nor does it have a lot of time to get its act together and quickly organize and strengthen. Because as it moves further to the west, it's going to be moving into cooler waters, it's going to be moving into stronger wind shear and a little bit more dry air as well. So that's kind of your warning signs, and definitely looking at this, to me, this is looking like, okay, it's going to be a relatively quick but potentially somewhat strong system, at least in this for this part of the year. My personal thinking, and I've been talking to other people on Discord about this, most notably Logan Rounds, also known as Tropical Surge, shout out to him. We're thinking about 60 miles per hour as the absolute peak for what would eventually, if this would pan out, be Tropical Storm Amanda. So that's kind of our situation that we're panning out and looking at right here. Shifting over further to the east, let's go ahead and do that. So shifting further to the east, as you can see 96 hours out, we're only seeing one little ensemble over here off the coast of Mexico. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and get a better angle and get a better image of this, because we also have Guatemala, El Salvador, and those areas to pay attention to as well. But as we go ahead and go to 120 hours out, we are seeing a couple of ensembles popping up, but this does appear to be a long-term threat. But this long-term threat definitely has quite a bit more power associated with it compared to our little area of interest further to the west. You're starting to see some ensembles slowly pick up about 6 days out or so. NHC's forecast goes out 7 days, so that's why they tag the area of interest. Then as we go ahead and go to about 8 days out, so this will be June 8th, you're seeing a lot more signals starting to pop up, and you're definitely seeing more power associated with it, as these water temperatures are about 32 degrees Celsius at the absolute max, and you're also looking at lower wind shear and a lot more moisture to work with, mainly due to the influence of the Central American gyre. So that's definitely something that we're going to want to pay attention to. Then let's go ahead and go to 9 days out, showing more ensembles. These ensembles potentially getting up to close to hurricane strength for sure as well. So that's something to pay attention to. Then lastly, as we go ahead and go to June 10th, yeah, you're seeing a lot more power. 988, 992, those are your weak to mid hurricane strength in the EPAC. 974, 961 are a few others that I'm watching as well. 966, 975, potentially up to Category 2 strength according to some of these ensembles. And as we show the operational runs, we can definitely kind of cross-check and cross-reference what's going on with this as well. But overall, this does appear to be more of a long-term threat, but because of its close proximity to El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico, this does pose more of a threat to land, and I am taking this a bit more seriously, mainly because of that fact, whether people are tuning in using an auto-translating through the subtitles, or whether people are on vacation and going to these areas. You're going to want to watch out and pay attention to this going forward. Let's go ahead and shift over to our operational runs. We're going to show the European and the GFS right here. Let's go ahead and go to the EPAC for the European, and then we'll shift over after we're done here. But here's the European model that we have pulled up for you right here. European has this, has at least for this system, starting to slowly get its act together around 48 hours from now. You're definitely seeing that closed low, and then quick organization is the name of the game for right here. It doesn't go as strong. Around 1,003 millibars is its peak initially, but it does hover around at the 1,002, 1,003 millibar range. Then it slowly starts to strengthen to a potential like moderate to strong tropical storm, at least from what I'm seeing. European is going down to 998 millibars though, so maybe we could see like a 60 to 65 mile per hour tropical storm out of this before it moves into cooler waters and ultimately weakens as a result, mainly starts stagnating. Then as it moves into dry air and more wind shear, it starts to get torn apart and then weaken as that starts to happen. But then you have this system starting to slowly get its act together. You have this low pressure system starting to move through parts of Central America and start to get its act together, as we see with the 0Z operational. 1006 millibar low pressure really starts to get its act together, although the initial development of this system is going to be relatively broad, so it's going to take its time to organize and consolidate before it starts to ramp up its intensity, because what it needs to do is it needs to tighten its core. And a 1002 millibar system that's relatively broad like this isn't going to strengthen the fastest unless unless the system starts to tighten and consolidate, and it does appear to start doing that by June 9th. And then you have the system starting to get its act together around 987 millibars. That's a Category 1 hurricane through and through as it starts to move off the coast of Mexico. It does appear that the outer bands do impact these regions right there, so maybe because of how broad it is, maybe tropical storm force winds could reach the area, those areas over there at the absolute worst. But as it starts to continue to consolidate and organize, 974 millibars is the peak that the European has by about June 12th. I don't know how realistic that is because of how far out it is, but that would be a Category 2 hurricane at that current point before it starts to continue to intensify before weakening as it moves into more sheer and cooler waters. But still, European is on the more aggressive side, potentially Category 2 intensity as of the 0Z right here. So we'll have to watch that. And we'll have to pay attention to it. Let's go ahead and show the GFS right here. We'll show the 0Z GFS and then the 12Z to see how things have changed over there. But the 0Z GFS, you have the system starting to slowly organize and consolidate, and then at least for out here with this first system, kind of a little bit stronger than the European, but about the same ballpark. Strong tropical storm force is the name of the game. But then as we get to a week out, you have the GFS really starting to ramp up pretty quickly, actually around 985 millibars right off the coast of Mexico. And the GFS actually does have the system weakening pretty quickly, but also that's mainly due to land interaction as well. But the GFS kind of has vorticity bias and vorticity issues. It does spin up another tropical cyclone further down the line, but it's relatively inconsistent at this current hour. And then as we go to the 12Z, let's go ahead and take a look and see if those issues have fixed. And for the most part, they have to some extent. The GFS is definitely a lot more broad, especially with what the European was forecasting for as well. And the GFS, interestingly, is actually more on the conservative side compared to the European. Maybe strong tropical storm strength is the name of the game that we're going to want to watch and kind of take seriously as well. Me personally, where myself and Logan are thinking with this as well, I think we're thinking around maybe 85 miles per hour is where the system's going to potentially strengthen up to. We do think that what would be Hurricane Boris in this situation would get up to 85 miles per hour. It has that higher ceiling. It has those warmer waters. It has that lower shear as well. So we're going to want to watch out and want to pay attention to that as well. But ultimately, this is kind of a situation that is heating up, and while it's still in its infancy, it's something that we're going to want to watch, and we'll continue to keep you updated on here at the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But now let's go ahead and shift over to the Atlantic, because we have some more stuff that we do want to cover over there. Taking a quick gander at the European, we have a couple of areas that I am paying attention to even still. The first area, and we'll go ahead and start off, and we'll go ahead and move out to about a few days from now. The first area that I'm looking at that the European was kind of hinting at over here is this potential system right here over in as you start moving into the subtropical Atlantic off the coast of the Carolinas and Georgia. That's where it originally originates right there. However, I am looking at this, and there are a couple of questions that I have with this. Number one, how is this going to be more mid-latitude cyclone, or is this going to be frontal, or is this going to be warm core in nature? Is it going to be cold core or warm core? I think initially this is going to be cold core in nature, and what I mean by that is this is going to be a mid-latitude cyclone using baroclinic forcing to intensify. However, I am looking at this, and based on what I'm seeing with the models right here, I would not necessarily rule out maybe something subtropical with this. And the reason I'm not ruling that out is because of the way this behaves and the way it starts to consolidate itself and the way that the low pressure system starts to get its act together. Yes, it does have a little bit of, it is a bit frontal in nature for sure, but I wouldn't necessarily rule something out like it being subtropical. especially as it starts to use some of that water temperature to feed itself compared to baroclinic forcing. Also, looking at the pressure system itself, it does start to consolidate pretty quickly, but it does ultimately start to fizzle out by the time we get to about 6 days out. So maybe a brief subtropical system is possible with this, but again, it's very iffy on whether this is mid-latitude in nature or if it's going to be that, and kind of there's a little bit of uncertainty regarding that according to the European. And then if we look at the GFS as well, the GFS is also showing this as well. However, you're going to want to watch out for kind of how this ultimately starts to develop and where this originates from. It does originate from Georgia and South Carolina, so it initially starts out as more so baroclinic and mid-latitude in nature, but you do start seeing the system consolidating and organizing, kind of how a tropical cyclone would right here. And just for my own curiosity, I want to take a quick gander at maybe a little bit of the wind shear as well before we get further into that. Yeah, it looks to me that maybe there's a pocket of wind shear that kind of starts to originate, where maybe this would have a little bit of an opening to do that. But we'll have to watch and we'll have to pay attention to it. Yeah, it looks like, according to the GFS right here, it looks like it does kind of hug this wind shear pocket right there. So we'll have to kind of take it. We'll kind of have to take it with a grain of salt for sure. So we'll continue to keep you updated, and we'll continue to pay attention to that as well. The other area I'm looking at is this right here. We're looking at maybe something happening in the Gulf. The GFS is obviously the GFS, but given that this is a few days out, it's definitely something worth mentioning for a couple of reasons. Number one, if the system does start to get its act together, some potential impacts are possible for parts of the Gulf Coast, namely Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Am I saying that we're going to see like major impacts from this? Most likely not. This is probably going to be like, if it, let's say hypothetically it does develop, this would be probably in my opinion, like at tropical depression to weak tropical storm strength at most. It can happen, but because it's so early in the season, it's kind of something I'm taking with more of a massive grain of sodium chloride. Shout out Jimmy Neutron for that. That's kind of where I started getting that from. But ultimately, that's kind of what we're looking at. Maybe a little spin up over here. Kind of emerging off Central America, similar to what our little Eastern Pacific system is going to be doing down the line. So that, again, very skeptical, very early on, keeping a close eye on it, but regardless, something to pay attention to. So now let's go ahead and shift over a little bit. We'll go ahead and pull back our trusty dusty European model, and we'll take a quick gander at our wind shear. For sure, because I am a bit curious to see how this will pan out. Wind shear definitely remains pretty much relatively strong across much of the Atlantic, especially the main development region and in the Caribbean. I know I talked about yesterday how the Gulf and the Western Caribbean seems to be more of a wild card, and part of the reason for that right here is because of this. This is your high pressure system. This is your ridge right here, and this is your trough that's really starting to dig into parts of Florida, into parts of the Atlantic right here. So that's kind of part of the reason why this is a wild card, because you have kind of these trough and ridge setups going on, especially as severe weather season is still ongoing across parts of the United States. We had some severe weather even yesterday in parts of the Great Plains. This is going to continue at least throughout all of June, maybe into July in parts of the northern Great Plains as well. I know that's when their severe weather season starts to ramp up and get their act together. But ultimately, what we look at for the next week or so is you're seeing wind shear kind of fluctuating all over the place, especially in parts of the subtropics. It does become a bit more consistent in the western part of the Atlantic, but then then things start to kind of go up and down, up and down, up and down. Not just in the Gulf region too, but also in the Caribbean and even a little bit in the main development region. At least the extreme southern tip of the main development region, things start to back off, and that shear actually shifts further up to the north. Moving forward into parts of mid-June. So that's definitely a bit of a development that we're going to want to watch out for. Am I saying that development's going to start in the MDR right away? No. And the reason for that is because of this. This is your Sahara air layer. This is your dry air. Dry air is going to also be a bit of an issue for development initially early in the season, but as you kind of start to look and you kind of start to notice, at least in the western Atlantic, rather, you are noticing kind of more moisture per se, and you're also noticing kind of this air layer starting to push further up to the north, kind of more. It's kind of fluctuating up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. But that's kind of something we're going to want to watch out for as well as we go later into the season, and that's something we're going to continue to keep you updated on here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. Be sure to join the Storms United Discord server. Link to that is in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.